Magandang araw, mabuhay! Welcome to a new episode of Holding Space Voices of Hope. Ako po muli si Pia Wurtzbach and this is our second episode. Sa mga bagong manonood, ang Holding Space Voices of Hope is a program where we give a voice to different issues affecting people's mental wellness while encouraging everyone to reach out to the people that they trust for support. Ang programang ito ay handog sa atin ng Flourish by Love Yourself at in partnership with Mental Health PH. Ang bawat episode ng Holding Space ay magbibigay ng storya ng inspirasyon. Ito ay magpapatotoo na may mga tao na handang tumulong at sumuporta sa atin physically, mentally, and emotionally para malampasan ang mga pinagdadaanan sa buhay. During our first episode, I've been able to talk to Papa Chen, who shared his story about having anxiety and depression alongside his personal battle with HIV. This time, isang kwento naman ng isang babae na may struggle sa kanyang pangangatawan ang ating bibigyang mukha. Kasi guys, di ba, in our culture, we're fascinated with cute kids with chubby cheeks. Tapos minsan sasabihin pa natin na ay napabayaan sa kusina because we associate it with wealth, di ba? However, this statement and other similar comments might not be what some kids wanted to hear. And these unconscious remarks could have a negative impact on the physical and mental being of that child. Kasama natin ngayon to share her battle with bulimia and how a simple comment changed her lifestyle ay si Kyra. Kyra's 31 years old, she lives in Taytay, and she's also a mental health advocate who's been bulimic since her late teens. Kyra, thank you so much for coming over to share your stories. I really appreciate you coming here. First of all, kumustahan muna tayo. How are you and how have you been during this pandemic?
It's really been a journey, I think. As you know, I have generalized anxiety disorder and depression, so it's not been easy sort of to handle that uncertainty. Lalo na that it's a continuing uncertainty.
Thank you for being here and sharing your story with us. I know that you battled with bulimia before, and that's what you're going to share with our viewers. So NEDA, or the National Eating Disorder Association, says that bulimia is actually treatable. And then that it can happen to everyone, all genders, races, religion, whatever your background is, whatever your ethnicity is or your sexual orientation, it can happen to anyone.
Absolutely.
Now, can you share your story with us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. It started when I was much younger. I think from what I've read and learned and heard from my own research and from people telling their own stories, a lot of eating disorders will manifest when you're younger. So for me, it started with a clear understanding that something was kind of wrong with my body. So when I was younger, my parents would take my brother and I out to go shopping, as you would, because you're kids. It would be a point of parang frustration for my parents in particular, because for my age, I would be bigger. I always have been, still am. And so it made shopping, which is supposed to be something that my parents enjoyed, something really disappointing, almost shameful for me. And it took a while to process that it was shame, and I was embarrassed, because nothing would fit or it would fit wrong. And my mom in particular, she's a girly girl. She wants somebody to dress up, and she has a daughter. Of course, that's very normal. That's what you expect. But because I was the size that I was, there was a lot of pressure when I was younger to know, first of all, that something was wrong with me, and it was particularly my size. I would try to diet when I was younger, like at 7 or something, and I would do that diet by trying to skip meals or dinner because I had felt so pressured to lose weight. The only way sort of to pacify and to get out of that shame was to reduce, to get smaller, to shrink. So when I was growing up, it would be sort of that thing, try to diet, can't really do it, I love food too much because it's food, and we're Filipino. We structure so many things around food, And it's the easiest way. It's the easiest way to say, I want to catch up. Parang kape tayo, kain tayo, like join me for a meal.
It's a way of bonding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
More so for us, I think, especially again when you're in Manila and there's very little else to do. If anorexia is not eating, bulimia is eating to excess and then having a compensatory behavior after it. So for me, it was purging, which is vomiting. And for others, it would be exercise, abusing laxatives. I imagine other ways, but for me, it was eating to excess, gorging myself, and then purging afterwards. And that started maybe in my late teens. It was easy enough. It was easy. I saw the food go down. I flushed it away. And then I felt light. I didn't look lighter, but it felt like a relief. It felt like I had done something good and right, which for all intents and purposes were two different things, but of equal value. So it was really easy to get away with, because it was just really easy also to find any excuse to go to a bathroom or to throw up into mugs or to say no to friends asking you out when you know that there's no easy way to throw up into anything. And that happened all the time, I felt. My job in publishing meant that I worked at home, where it was even easier sort of to continue the habit. But I think the key takeaway for me there was that it had to stop, because I was starting to see the really bad physical effects of bulimia. And part of it was in the enamel in my teeth. When you keep throwing up and when you do it every day, or at some point 5 times a day for me, the acid from your stomach will break down the enamel in your teeth. And so I started to get sort of painful toothaches. I also became anemic at some point because I had thrown up so often and so much that I had gone down to past 100 pounds, so mga 95 or something. And when I couldn't donate blood, that's when I knew that it had to change. I couldn't do something anymore that I really wanted to do. The thoughts, they're always there. It's every day. It's every time I'm in the bathroom. I would think, you just ate. You ate 2 hours ago. You could throw that up. And then it would be a physical act to say, no, that's not good for me. I don't do that anymore. I'm in recovery. Even though I've been in recovery, and even though I'm actively practicing, not throwing up, not going back into that cycle. Every mealtime, there's always a little thing at the back of my head that's going, just eat more rice. It's always there. And I think that's the important thing, is not getting afraid of the thought.
So, bulimia nervosa is an eating disorder. It's characterized by binge eating. So, even when someone is full already, the person will still continue to eat to the point of nausea or discomfort. So, it's generally eating more than what they need in a short span of time. And there's an obvious lack of control over eating. And just like what Kyra mentioned, it is usually followed by compensatory behavior to prevent weight gain. Self-induced vomiting, or you can call it purging. Use of laxative. So she also mentioned it, laxative to induce elimination, bowel elimination. Diuretics to increase urine production. Even if they use in medications, these medications are not necessarily needed. And it's also possible that the eating behavior can be followed by fasting or excessive exercise. And for a person to be diagnosed with bulimia nervosa, it has to regularly occur, or the behavior has to regularly occur at least once a week and for 3 months. But on severe cases, it can happen multiple times in a day, because people who are going through bulimia may be secretive. They might feel embarrassed with the way that they behave. So sometimes you won't even notice the binging, just like what Kyra said. She became really an expert in hiding the binging from her family. Please take note, for some cases, the symptoms might not be too obvious, because people who are going through bulimia nervosa will really try their best to hide it, to hide what they're going through from their friends and family. So those who have experienced childhood maltreatment or something traumatic during childhood, are at greater risk of developing bulimia nervosa and eating disorder in general. It has high genetic component, meaning it's highly hereditary. And like Kyra's case, it started when she was young. So usually the onset would begin during late teens and early adulthood. So that's why it's very important that adults are educated about this, and that eating disorders are real and they exist. And when they educated about the warning signs, they can provide the necessary guidance. Girls and women are more at risk of developing bulimia nervosa and eating disorders in general. But it doesn't mean that men cannot suffer from it too. People who are in sports, the athletes, dancers, models, and those who are joining beauty pageants are at greater risk of developing bulimia nervosa and eating disorders in general.
Yeah, it sounds like this happened very early on in your childhood,
Yeah.
and then even up to your teens, even up to your early 20s. What did you have a support system? Did you have friends that you could speak to, and what was your family like during this whole time?
Yeah. So I did have some friends that sort of understood what was going on with me, but not to the. They didn't find out until I had to tell them years and years after, and those were my friends from high school. So I had some friends, but my family, like my parents and my sibling, I think it was the fact that they found out that helped me realize that this wasn't something I could continue doing, and the fact that this was something they were also ashamed of. That was that was terrible to be confronted with, even though it wasn't a specifically supportive environment, because they couldn't understand why I was doing something and I couldn't explain it myself. It was the fact that they were still there, and they were helping to police the behavior, helping to point it out, that contributed to the kind of help. Yeah.
They need our patience in helping them go through the treatment process, because in some cases the response might take a while, and it's also possible na they've also already experienced remission, meaning nawala na yung mga symptoms, meaning they were able to recover from the symptoms, but then all of a sudden they might experience relapse. That's also possible. Babalik ulit yung symptoms and they will go back to the compensatory. They will do the compensatory behavior again, such as the purging. But it's common. Relapse is really common, not just for eating disorder, but yung undergoing treatment for mental disorders in general. But again, we just have to be patient with them. We just have to remind them to continue with the treatment. In particular, might need help from a team of professionals. And it's because people with eating disorders do not just suffer from the psychological manifestations, such as their self-esteem getting affected, they might have a distorted view of their weight, but because there are also a lot of physiological effects. For the psychological intervention, it's really important because sometimes it's really the perception, yung distorted perception of the weight, yung unhealthy ways of thinking, yung maladaptive ways of thinking that can only be addressed through psychological intervention. I just want to emphasize on the importance of involving the family in maintaining healthy eating patterns, because it makes the intervention more sustainable, diba, when the family is involved, and especially when the family is educated about their condition. So it makes everyone at home responsive to their needs and even sensitive to their physiological and psychological needs. And I also want to add that medications can also be taken for people who are suffering from bulimia nervosa. It's always best to consult with a psychiatrist to confirm the most effective medication depending on the severity and the nature of bulimia for each case.
Because I'm doing a study on eating disorders in the Philippines now, and I keep getting I get sort of emails now and then from people who are saying, do you have sources for eating disorder research that's based in the Philippines? And I keep having to say, I don't. this is why I'm writing this stuff, because where is it? I think that's also part of the problem, is that if we don't recognize that we can have that something is a problem, then we can't recognize it in ourselves or in other people. What you were describing earlier, na everybody is doing it. Maybe we can also ask, like, what's sort of controlling those behaviors? Like, what to what end? Is it because we desire to look a certain way, and then why? Why do we do that? Why do we desire to look a certain way? Desire to have a certain shape, desire to have a certain skin tone, or desire to present a certain way. Those are the bigger issues that we also have to think
That's
about.
true. It's always going back to the why, right? Like, why am I feeling this way?
Exactly.
Why do I feel like I need to fit into this box?
Exactly.
Why do I feel like I need to change myself?
Yeah.
You always go back to the why, and I think there you'll find your parang true answer.
Yeah, but
right?
okay, so we're asking those questions. Why do you think?
I mean, we live in a society na, well, hindi lang naman sa Pilipinas, but just in general, in the whole world, na talagang nadjudge. I mean, ako nga galing ako sa industry, beauty pageant. Ginajudge ka sa itsura mo.
Yeah.
You know, I can relate to you to some extent, because sa akin naman was the opposite, really restricting, and it happened in my early 20s. And if you guys go back to all my old pictures, you'll think, uy, ang ganda mong tingnan doon, pero hindi nyo alam yung physically, yung pinagdadaanan ko noon, and mentally ng katawan ko, and what I put myself through just for you to be able to tell me that I'm beautiful enough.
Exactly.
You know?
But you're stunning. I'm sorry.
No, but
You're stunning. You're so beautiful.
But so many people go through this, and they just feel like they're never enough.
And to that, I still feel that way. I think that's a hallmark of a lot of that's a hallmark of anxiety issues. That's a hallmark of depression. This sort of core belief that we're not enough because of this.
Kyra, I also want to share, no, because while we're talking about eating disorders, and I don't want people to think na si Pia yung nag-i-interview, wala naman sigurong problema yan ever sa weight niya. Alam kong nanggaling ako sa beauty pageant, but trust me when I say that almost everybody who joins struggles with their appearance. Nobody is really fully 100% confident in themselves and contented with their bodies. Kahit na mukhang okay kami, tingnan sa panlabas, there's really so much going on inside, and there's always that feeling of, I'm not good enough.
Yeah. While eating disorders in the extreme aren't as visible or as studied, especially in the Philippines, it is so normal to feel afraid of rice, or saying, hindi na lang ako kain ng dessert kasi kumain ako kahapon, or I feel fat in these pants, or I feel like I need to lose 5 pounds because it's summer and I don't look good in a swimsuit. But what if you do? And I think that's a bigger problem that sort of underscores and informs eating disorders as well. It's just this massive discontent with how we look.
So it sounds like to me na every day you have to make a decision of whether I'm gonna go left or right.
Yeah.
And but what's keeping you in the right direction now?
I don't know. It changes every day. I think most days it's the fact that I was able to do it yesterday. And when I fail, it's the fact that I can try again. And I know it sounds corny.
No,
corny.
but it hits. It hits.
Good.
I get it. I get
Good.
what you mean. Yes.
Yeah. And so I guess tanggalin lang natin yung expectation na I'm gonna do this for a year. I think that's scarier than maybe I'll just try again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also not to pressure yourself in doing it perfectly all the time.
Yes, I think that's really important. I think that's also something to recognize, acknowledge, and then say, but maybe I can fail and it won't be the end of the world.
Yeah.
Maybe I can fail. Maybe that's okay. And I know that thinking about it again sounds corny, but I swear to God, if you say it to your reflection, it hits.
Could you share some more with us though?
Yeah.
Like what else helped you?
when I was diagnosed with anxiety, when I first went to my doctor and he said, listen, this is what that is, it was relief. So having to name it, being able to name it really helped because it gave the experience a shape. And so it gave it, instead of this floating boundary, it gave it an end, even though it's still ongoing, you know.
Maybe somebody's watching now, maybe they're in their early 20s, maybe they're not sure if what they're going through is something to be concerned about. What would be your advice to them?
I guess as an adult, I would say go online. I would say find your tribe, like find the people who are going through the same thing and try to make connections and try to support each other. So first maybe is to recognize that they're not alone. So find the people who can support you in that way. And then trust your gut. Because if you feel like it's not a safe space at home, find another safe space. I understand that some parents might not have the capacity to care for children who are experiencing these things. Some parents might not be equipped, you know, to look at their own biases, and that's human of them. So find the people who can.
But how important is it to be honest and to say it out loud and to have a community, or as you said, a tribe that you can trust? How important was that for your process of healing?
It was vital. I wouldn't have any level of maturity or control without being able to process it with another person in some way or shape or form. Even though, you know, that person was miles away, even though it was just through a call or a chat, if that was the medium that helped me feel secure. So it was vital for me. In my experience, if you find somebody going through the same thing, it's like, if they're going through it and I'm going through it, there's got to be more of us. And if there's more of us, somebody survived this. So this is survivable, it feels like, if you get my meaning.
I was just about to say thank you so much for sharing your story, and I hope that anybody out there who's watching this right now, who's going through the same thing, won't feel, as you said, alone.
So too.
Muli, isa na namang kwento tungkol sa mental health ang ating nabigyang muka at naway nakapulutan nyo ng aral. Sana ang mga boses nila ay magsilbing gabay para sa ating lahat na meron tayong pag-asa. We would like to thank Flourish by Love Yourself and Mental Health PH for making this episode possible, and All Right Studios for the production. Muli po, ito po si Pia Wurtzbach, and we will be right here sa Holding Space, giving the voice and even a light of hope. Until our next episode, maraming salamat po. Mwah!